What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice. This time for DraftKings and FanDuel's Thursday Night Showdown slate, single game football, Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. In this video, we will give you very important injury updates that impact tonight's showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. We will discuss low risk lineup construction tips and then picks, strategies, ideas, everything you need for high risk contests, the largest contests and GPPs that FanDuel and DraftKings have to offer. Before we get into tonight's video, though, just a couple points from week one and from Monday's slate. For those of you who played the Monday Night Football slate, Christian McCaffrey was unexpectedly ruled out. Caught us by surprise, too. I'll be honest. No one was expecting that. So we were left scrambling to update our models, update our ownership, figure out what the field is going to do, figure out our own lineups, answer member questions, all within an hour and a half before lock. So I saw a bunch of questions on the YouTube channel after McCaffrey was rolled out. Apologies, we couldn't get to them. Our Discord and our members will always come first. So if you want the latest updates, granted, those are rare situations, but if you want updates in those situations, make sure you join OccupyFantasy.com or check out our Discord. So now, if we talk about week one, and I will discuss snap counts and usage here in this video for both the Bills and the Dolphins, we do have to be careful. As we've said many times on our shows here in the past couple of years, that still preseason average draft position in season long leagues is more predictive of rest of year fantasy scoring than week one by itself or weeks 1 through 4. So while we're seeing how players were used, there are still situational factors, how tight or how big of a blowout the game was, injuries. So we can look at snap counts from week one, but we can't directly apply them in all cases perfectly to week two. So with all that said, let's jump into tonight's slate and let's start with low risk contests, 50-50s, double ups, head to heads, contests where you just have to beat half the field to double your money. But I guess before we do that, we probably should talk about these injuries that I mentioned earlier. And let's talk about the Miami backfield. Let's start with Miami in general. So Raheem Mostert ruled out of this game, has a chest injury. Head coach Mike McDaniel said he actually hurt his chest, or it sounds like a collarbone joint sprain near the chest. Hurt it early in week one and toughed it out and played. It sounds like it's going to take some time to heal. He will be out tonight. Devon Achane, late in that game, hurt his ankle. Depending on the source you use, there hasn't been an official designation as to what the exact injury is. Some Twitter doctors believe it's a high ankle sprain, which are tough to come back from, but he practiced on Wednesday. By all accounts, all videos, he seemed to have been moving well. And maybe 2 minutes before I started recording this video, Ian Rappaport, along with Cameron Wolf, reported that he's going to test his ankle out pregame, but based on how he feels now and how he practiced yesterday and how he looked, he's expected to play tonight. So Devon Achane, we expect to play tonight. However, as we saw with McCaffrey on Monday, things can change, so be on the lookout for that. Now, if we look at snaps last week, Raheem Mostert, 31 snaps, super tough dude with that injury. Devon Achane, 37 snaps, and then Jeff Wilson Jr., the veteran, $2,400 on DraftKings. He played 11 snaps last week, and while Jalen Wright was the guy that everyone drafted in season-long leagues as the running back sleeper for Miami, it was actually Jeff Wilson who got the nod in week one. Maybe that was due to special teams. However, if you were with us during preseason DFS, you know that Jeff Wilson got the first crack in all the games that both he and Jalen Wright were active in preseason. So depth chart and everything else tells us that Jeff Wilson is ahead of Jalen Wright at this point in the season. That could change. So how we would expect this to play out tonight. Devon Achane, assuming he's healthy, gets the lead number, maybe 30, 37 snaps like he did last week. Jeff Wilson should be right there with him. Now, he is a veteran, but we should see 20-plus snaps for Jeff Wilson tonight, and Jalen Wright should clean up, mix in 10 to 15 snaps. Now, all of this can change. We don't know. No one knows on how healthy Achane is, if he re-injures his ankle, how they actually view Jalen Wright. Do they want to preserve Jeff Wilson as a veteran? He sounds, we talk about Jeff Wilson like he's a super old guy, but he's actually pretty young in real life standards. Been around the NFL for a few years, but not like he's this old guy they have to preserve. So we project Achane to lead the order for Miami, Jeff Wilson to complement, and then Jalen Wright to mix in that order. So let's keep that in mind as we're building our lineups for tonight. Malik Washington, the rookie receiver, he is still out dealing with a quad injury. In his absence last week, it was Braxton Berrios, the clear wide receiver, and the slot receiver ran 18 routes last week. And then it was Grant Dubose and Robbie Chosen cleaning up the mess at the end. And Jalen Waddle missed 4 or 5 routes in that game, so that's why those bottom end of the roster guys saw a little bit more snaps than they typically would have, but it's Braxton Berrios who gets the biggest benefit from Malik Washington's absence. On Buffalo, no major injuries to talk about, except for their starting strong safety / slot corner, Teron Johnson. Now, as a strong safety, an impact, obviously, missing, but really it's his slot corner work. He left the game early in week 1. Now, running the most routes out of the slot for Miami is Braxton Berrios, so he gets a little bump here in this game. But also Tyreek Hill ran a decent amount of routes out of the slot in week 1, and if you're missing your starting slot corner against Tyreek Hill, that is never good news. So fingers crossed for Buffalo's defense. Okay, now let's talk about these low-risk contests, 50-50s, double-ups, and head-to-heads. You know the strategy by now if you've been watching these videos. We try to lock up all the scoring, both running backs and both quarterbacks. A little tricky tonight, but also in addition to locking up the scoring, we want to play any obvious values. So Jeff Wilson, number 1 player into your lineup tonight on both sites in low-risk contests, just $2,400. Even if he only plays 10 snaps, that is a good number for $2,400. We expect at least double that. So Jeff Wilson easily in there. Now, the issue with trying to lock up all the scoring in this game means that you probably won't be able to access Tyreek Hill, who has one of the highest floors and ceilings on the slate. And it'll feel extremely risky not to have Tyreek Hill in your low-risk lineup. So if we play Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, Tua, 50-50 left per player, we still want to get Devon Achane as a lead back in there. 500 per player, we could punt the last position, maybe. Alec Ingold ran 11 routes last week as their fullback, more than your typical fullback. That's certainly possible. We're leaving out James Cook here, who handled 19 of the 24 rushing attempts for Buffalo's backfield in week 1. But he's probably, if you have to leave out one guy, it's probably James Cook because he's not. Josh Allen just vultures every touchdown around the goal line anyways. And if we look at pricing, let's get Tua out of here. We see Tua 9,400, Cook 9K. Cook has a solid role, but he's probably the guy we leave out just based on touchdown equity here. So here's one way to do it, right? You could also leave out Tyreek. Again, you could put Cook in here. Now you have 3,100, and you can play a defense, Jonnu Smith, Dawson Knox, Jalen Wright, whatever it is, right? The other way, and I think what we might see a lot of people do tonight, especially if Wilson's role is as expansive as we believe it to be, is you captain Jeff Wilson in your low-risk lineups. That allows you an extra stud. Now you can fit Tyreek, Allen, Achane, Tua, and now you can fit a kicker as your last spot. Or if you don't want to go Tyreek, you go James Cook, and now you can fit Kincaid or Shakir in your last spot. So I think this is the way to go, captaining Jeff Wilson in your low-risk DraftKings lineups. Obviously, you're not going to do that over on FanDuel, but Jeff Wilson still just 6,500 on FanDuel. We're going to flex him absolutely in our low-risk lineups here. However, this is tough. We obviously can't fit all 4 of the top guys we want. Let's just say we want Allen, Tyreek, Tua, Achane. We cannot do that. That's 6,000 left per player. How we feel here is you want to get Allen in your lineup. You want to get Jeff Wilson in your lineup because of his value, if I can spell his name right. And we want to get Achane as explosive and elite back from Miami. This is probably the core, and it feels bad leaving Tyreek Hill out. But if you play Tyreek on DraftKings, you play both sites, you can certainly do this and feel like you have a balanced allocation in your low-risk lineups. Then you have to pick from here, whether it's Tua and one of the 10K Buffalo receivers, Coleman or Kincaid, or whether it's James Cook and Jalen Waddle. That's an option as well. Or Tyreek in the punt. 7,500. You could play Jonnu Smith, Braxton Berrios, Dawson Knox. So a couple ways to play it. It's not a perfect low-risk night by any means on FanDuel. But I think that's what you have to do. It's these 3 guys, and then you pick the 2v2 after that. So, all right. Let's transition to high-risk contests, leagues, satellites, GPPs, small field, large field, all the contests where the payouts are exponential. Let's jump into those. You know we got to get the water break in. Let's get a sip. Let's stay hydrated. You know, we actually got, I talk about the water break sponsors. We've actually gotten 3 inquiries. I don't know how serious they are, but let's keep the inquiries coming. If you want to sponsor the water break, the water sip segment, let us know. It doesn't have to be water. We got three, whether it's serious or fake or trolling water. It was all water related. It doesn't have to be water, I guess, but if you want to sponsor the water sip segment, let's keep it going. All right. High risk. Let's talk about small field contests first, where we just need 1, maybe 2 points of differentiation, depending on how big the contest is. 100 players, 200 players. If it's less, you certainly need less differentiation. The kickers, as we've talked about so far this season with the looser pricing. Now, the pricing isn't as loose on this slate. We see, obviously, let's go to DraftKings. We see Josh Allen at 11K, Tua 9,400. This is more typical than as to what we saw last year compared to all of week 1. But we have the underpricing of Jeff Wilson, the running back 2, running back 1B, whatever you want to call it. And as a result, we see kickers and defense much lower owned than they would be on a typical slate where we don't have this obvious value. So we expect the kickers on DraftKings to hover around 20%. They actually might exceed 20% on FanDuel just because of the pricing dynamic over there. But these guys are around 20%, still good value plays. If it's a bigger contest, you'll probably need one more point of differentiation. Smaller contest, you might be able to get away with this depending on who your captain is. But all that said, if you just play one player who's under 20%, that's not Jeff Wilson. He's going to be much higher than 20% owned in all contest types. That's an easy way to get different. Just one point of differentiation. And we'll go through these guys who we expect to be lower owned here in a second once we get to the larger contests. But in fact, let's just do it now. Let's talk about these guys who we expect to be lower owned. So if we start from 5K or less, both defenses, obviously. Josh Allen, turnover prone. Tua, if you get pressure on him, can be turnover prone. Both great options at around 10% or less ownership. Ray Davis, he is the clear running back 3, $3,600. He'll be 1% owned. Really a large field play only. Let's talk about the Miami tight ends. Pretty interesting usage last week for them. However, if we paid attention during preseason, it might not be that surprising. We talked about Alec Ingold, who we're grouping in with the tight ends here. Although he's a fullback, he runs H-back tight end routes when he's in the game. 11 routes for Alec Ingold last year. Ingold is $400 on DraftKings. Durham Smythe, last year's starter, he ran 15 routes. He's only 1K. He led the group in targets last week. Again, very small sample, so I wouldn't do anything with that. But again, 1K for a guy who's going to run 15 routes, we will take that all the time. Jonnu Smith, their free agent acquisition, the more explosive of the group, 16 routes, he's $2,800. The other interesting guy is Julian Hill. He actually led the group in snaps last week, or in routes run last week. Julian Hill, $600. You may say, who the hell is Julian Hill? However, when we played Miami preseason DFS slates, they held out Julian Hill basically every single time. Even when some of the more important guys were playing or resting, like, wow, Julian Hill, he must be an important piece that Miami's expecting, or he has an injury that we're not sure about. It turns out he's important. 19 routes for Julian Hill. He's $600. He can help you fit in a lot, even if he catches 1 or 2 balls. That's big at his price tag. Other guys, let's go back here. Let's talk about the Buffalo receivers, right? Shakir ran 21 routes last week. It was actually the rookie Keon Coleman, much to many people's surprise, who led the group in routes run last week with 27. He's only $5,800. We expect him to be the most popular guy in this group. Curtis Samuel working his way back from injury, just 9 routes last week. Mac Hollins, 20 routes. He's only 1K. Sorry, he's $1,600 on DraftKings. Mac Hollins, 20 routes, caught the touchdown last week. But he's a guy that's going to see a good amount of run. And then you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, probably a large field play only ran 4 routes last week, but it was very clear watching the game that when they put him in, they either want to put pressure on the defense deep, whether as a decoy or literally use him deep. He got the one deep shot. He also had the one catch on. It looked like he was running deep and cut it off, got the catch. So Valdez-Scantling, while not going to be used heavily, has a pretty high value role. So a guy that we like to see is a guy who's going to be 1, 2, 3% owned in most GPPs. A good play. Again, most likely outcome is a 0, but he has a chance to catch a 50-yard touchdown. So we'll take that in high-risk contests all day. And now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we can't directly look at what happened in week 1 and translate it to week 2. Samuel was working his way back from injury for Buffalo. There's a chance he gets more snaps in this game. There's definitely a chance he gets more snaps, and it's more likely he gets more snaps in week 3. The question is, who does he take snaps from? It's probably not Keon Coleman. Is it Shakir? It's probably Mac Hollins. I don't know. We don't know. We have to see this play out. So either way, Curtis Samuel, 5% owned. A large field play only. He is, again, $5,400. Someone who runs 9 routes last week and is $5,400. No one's going to want to click that. So again, maybe we anticipate a little bit of a bump here as it gets reacclimated, more conditioning. A high-risk play only. Any other guys to talk about? I think that's it. The other one we have to talk about is Jalen Wright, though. He is 2K, and Jeff Wilson is 2,400. We look on FanDuel. Wilson is 6,500. Wright is 5,500. We're going to see 5 times the ownership on Jeff Wilson. We're going to monitor the industry throughout the day. Maybe that gets closer. We don't think it will. However, you could play a guy for a fraction of the ownership in Jalen Wright, who is undoubtedly more explosive, extremely fast. And if you play Wright over Wilson, that's a differentiated spot. Not many people will choose to do that. Most people choose to either do both or they will choose one or the other. But choosing Wright over Wilson is a big ownership discount. If you have that belief, even if you're just playing the game theory aspect, if Wright outscores Wilson on less touches, or we're just wrong and Wright is the number 2 guy tonight, and Wilson was only up in week 1 because of special teams. Hard to say. We think it's Wilson, but we could be very wrong. Are we 5 times as sure than the ownership indicates? No. So Wright is a great high-risk play as a result. Finally, let's talk about captains and MVPs for high-risk contests. Now, generally, we're looking to play lower-owned captains in these large contests or even smaller contests. We have Josh Allen and Tyreek Hill, both over 20% captain expected projected ownership, over 30% over on FanDuel. Allen's going to get a little more. And generally, we look to shy away from those guys. However, we have so many low-owned plays in this game. All those guys I just mentioned, you can play 1 or 2 of those in large contests, just 1 in small contests, and you have a very high floor, high ceiling lineup of 1 point of differentiation. It's very easy. With so many different plays to get different with, so many pieces, it's a really nice way to either lock either Tyreek or Josh Allen or play both heavily. Same on FanDuel. Play Josh Allen in all your lineups, play Tyreek, or play 50-50. There's so many low-owned plays that get different that you're allowed to do it. The other option, and it's a much easier way to differentiate if you're not thrilled with these low-owned plays, you don't want to pick and choose, you don't know which Buffalo receiver, you don't know which Miami tight end, you could play Devon Achane, who's going to be a fraction of the ownership that he should be because of the questionable tag and because Tyreek and Josh Allen especially, on the other side of the field. Or you could play Jalen Waddle, who's going to get an absolute fraction compared to Tyreek Hill, yet still has the explosive possibilities. So play Allen or Tyreek heavily at captain or MVP in your high-risk contest. Mix in low-owned guys. We already named a ton. Or get a fractional discounted ownership at captain or MVP with Jalen Waddle or Devon Achane. And you can play whoever you want, mostly with maybe 1 point of differentiation in the flex. All right, that'll do it for this video. We're getting really close to 10,000 subscribers. We're heating up in the subscriber count. Helps us way more than you could possibly believe. So if you're not subscribed already to the channel, just click subscribe on this video. It is free to do so. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't really impact your life. However, it does impact your life if you want more of these videos. If you like what you see here, click and subscribe. We'll put this video more in your YouTube feed when we post them here on Thursdays and Mondays for these showdown slates. We obviously have the main slate videos that our NFL manager Chris posts on Friday nights. We have our live Q&A we're doing on Saturdays where we answer all sorts of questions, not just DFS, but season-long, betting, Survivor, you name it. We're doing that on Saturdays. So subscribing is the best way to get notified when these videos are live or published. Give us a thumbs up. Again, that helps surprisingly way more than you know. A thumbs up is a very quick way to support the channel. It's free to do. However, if you want the late breaking news, you want all of our projections, you want our ownership projections that we update through Lock, and you want our lineup builder that allows you to build up to 300 lineups using all of our optimal lineup criteria, or you just want to read, you want more in-depth information about the slate, our daily plug has rankings, has lineup strategy tips for different contest types, as well as overall slate notes, more in-depth than I go in this video. OccupyFantasy.com is where you can get that extra edge for all of your showdown slates, in addition to all the other sports that we cover. So, Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy. Always appreciate you watching. Let's get it, and good luck tonight in the Bills and Dolphins showdown slate.